This is Talking Ears. My name is Juan Vasquez.
And I'm Frank Warninger. And we're excited to bring you this, the last episode of Season 3 of Talking Ears. We've been doing a series recapping talks and events that happened at the 2025 conference down in Charleston, and this one's just a little bit of a different format. Juan, what are we going to be hearing?
At the conference, Frank and I noticed two poster presentations that really stood out to us in regards to music audiology. In this interview, we talked to Blake Voss and Hannah Miller.
Yeah, so Blake and Hannah both serve on the NHCA Executive Committee as student delegates. They also both won the Student Conference Award, which is a scholarship given to students who have outstanding poster and research ideas. Hannah and Blake's posters caught our attention because they're looking at music as the potential source of hazardous sound, but they're looking at two very different populations and two different types of sound sources, both the electronic dance setting as well as educational music teacher settings. Let's have the students introduce themselves and their posters. We'll be starting with Hannah.
My name is Hannah Miller, and I'm a third-year audiology student at Idaho State University, and I presented a poster, Sound Exposure and Hearing Protection, a survey of electronic dance music attendees.
And what made you want to study specifically EDM, electronic dance music attendees? Is there a personal interest there, or is it just kind of a curious topic?
It's kind of both. So I grew up going to all different genre events. So I would go to mostly alternative events, just single concerts. And recently, my friends got me into festivals like Coachella. I'm from Southern California, so there's a pretty big scene and it's really fun. And I just noticed some differences in the structure of the events and the population of people who go there. I just really wanted to study it to see if they were at a higher risk for noise-induced hearing loss.
Oh, that's excellent. So, Blake, how about you? Where are you coming in from, and what's the title of your poster?
My name is Blake Voss. I'm from the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. The title of my poster is The Role of Music Educators in Hearing Loss Prevention. It is also a poster on my capstone research.
And similar question, what got you interested in actually studying music educators?
Absolutely. I actually spent 3.5 years studying for music education. I was originally choral and general music education. Originally thought I wanted to be a music teacher, but along the lines I found audiology and found how much I like the science of it all too. But during that time, I realized I had only ever been told about hearing conservation for one 20-minute session. And that happened to be because someone from my campus was doing their capstone research. With that being said, I wanted to know if others also had not been taught hearing conservation in their music education degree, or if it just so happened to be my lived experience.
My lived experience in music school was absolutely not. I do not remember hearing anything about hearing health the whole time. So,
Same with me. I went to music school and had been around music for a very long time in my educational journey. And not once in music was I ever told about any injury that can happen from doing what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Hannah, your poster really intrigued me because you asked some questions that are not normally asked. Could you give sort of a quick rundown of what the structure was and what the question that I'm referring to was that caused a little bit of online controversy?
Yeah, so we asked about noise exposure in terms of how many events they attend in their most active month. We also asked about what kind of hearing protection they used, if they used any or not, and if so, why? If not, why not? We asked to potential barriers to hearing protection use, what percentage of time they wore it, and then there were some controversial demographic questions, including what kind of substances do you engage in at these events? Because I feel like ravers and EDM festivals are notorious for the big amount of substance use. And they're pretty candid about the substance use, so I figured I would get a good response, and I ended up getting a good response from most people.
It surprised me to see that because I would think that some people would say, "Ooh, there's a researcher doing a study," or in this case, a survey of over 1,000 people. They're
that it suddenly got narky right there in the middle, where they're asking me whether or not I'm going to oust myself for doing MDMA. But it's cool that everybody responded. It's interesting because it did end up giving you some data to look at different groups of higher risk and lower risk individuals and their choices to make at these activities.
So we did look at it in two ways. We first looked at EDM versus other genre event attendees, and there was a higher percentage of drug use all across the board for legal and illegal substances. For MDMA, cocaine, and ketamine, it was about 3 times as high for EDM. And then we split that EDM group into profiles based on risk, and we did find that the highest risk profile had some of the most drug use out of the other profiles. So they're going to 26 plus hours of shows in their most active month, and they're not wearing hearing protection, and they're doing a lot of drugs and mixing those drugs as well.
It's extremely interesting. How much drugs are the music educators doing?
We did not evaluate what music teachers are doing for drugs. For ours, it was a survey research as well. It was sent out via Facebook groups. We had about 56 responses from across the state from current music educators, and that kind of ranged from public, private, school teachers, collegiate level, as well as private lessons. Basically, if you taught music professionally, you were included as a music educator. We also looked at music education students, so those that are in their program, and asked some questions as well.
So what did you find with your study and your research? Did anything surprise you?
Right. Well, kind of like you mentioned earlier, thinking about music education and hearing conservation, and knowing that I didn't have anything and most people in the field didn't receive any hearing conservation education, it's not surprising to learn that most educators have not been taught hearing conservation. They've not been really taught how to protect their hearing explicitly in college. There was some response saying they had been taught, so we'd ask, where did you learn this? For those that did receive hearing conservation education, it was at the collegiate level or personally on their own time. They had to seek it out on their own. There's really only one response that said, hey, I was taught how to wear hearing protection in band in my high school band. But all others happened either after school or on their own time.
That's interesting. And anecdotally, I hear from a lot of music educators that the way that they learned about hearing loss prevention is either their own or a close colleague or friend's hearing got injured. And we can do better, right, than
Absolutely.
Education through injury. It does not seem like a sustainable approach, right?
Absolutely.
I'm curious, Hannah, then, did you find that your folks were receptive to this questioning about hearing protection devices and hearing loss education similar to the music educators?
They were very receptive. So we included resources at the end of this survey, and we kind of alluded to that in one question where we asked if they would be willing to look further into those resources. And the most common response wasn't absolutely or like a strong yes, but it was probably more so than no.
That's good to hear. Mm-hmm. It occurs to me that a lot of the times that we speak to people about hearing loss prevention, it probably comes across as, here's a person yelling at me about earplugs again. And yet most of what we're saying is not wear earplugs. Most of what we're saying is respecting your ears and taking care of it. So same thing with the music educators. What is the intervention? What's the suggestion that we're thinking of making for it's a very tough setting.
Right. And part of the research was also looking into, are they interested in hearing conservation education? Are they wanting to learn more? The vast majority said yes. It was over 80% of respondents said, yes, I want to learn more about hearing conservation education. The question is how, right? We did ask a little bit into that, and most responded either online workshops, conferences, things like that, or in-person conferences or workshops that they're already attending. We know that educators are busy. We know that they're so busy with trying to fit all these things into curriculum that they don't necessarily have the extra bandwidth to go out and always learn about hearing conservation education. So likely next steps may be implementing some of this at state level conferences or getting more resources out there or making current resources more visible for these folks.
What were those resources specifically? Could you call out a couple of them?
Right. So there have been things that have been music-oriented in the past, such as Adopt a Band, which was previously done. No longer around, unfortunately, from my understanding. But they would come on out with a specialist, like an audiologist, and they would give all band members hearing protection, show you how to use them. And it was shown to be beneficial for a short-term behavior change, but not necessarily for long-term behavior change a couple months down the road. Other things that are already still running are dangerous decibels, although it's meant more in a general sense of, hey, move away from loud sounds, protect your hearing. It's not necessarily catered straight for music.
Right.
So you can have that argument both ways of dangerous decibels would still have a great place in a music classroom. But if they can maybe fine tune for musicians would also help as well, because it's a very different game.
It's fine tuned right now for grade school children. But I have often found that adults, do like colorful and clear messages just like kids. So it is workable, but you're right, it's not specifically geared there.
Right.
That's a good point. Hannah, what were the resources that you were referencing?
So I included some things that are from questions that are commonly asked to me, like what kind of hearing protection is the best for me? Is Loop a good product, for example? So I used a resource from Hearing Tracker. I think it was last year's highest rated hearing protection based on different factors that you want to prioritize, such as aesthetic or finances. So I included that. I also included Dr. Sinot's How to Insert Hearing Protection Properly video.
Yeah, those are great.
And then I included some other things like safe listening levels and durations for those certain levels, as well as the NIOSH Sound Level Meter app.
Excellent.
So it's really great that you provided those resources. What's the next step, I guess, particularly for this population that, as we all know, and if you attend those shows, those are really, really loud. What do you hope to do in the future? Is there any plan set?
So there are multiple steps. Once I graduate, I plan on becoming a music audiologist and going to these festivals, at least helping on the West Coast with the musicians, the attendees, and the venue workers. I also plan to implement my research into marketing strategies for hearing protection companies. Not to scare people, but to really emphasize those facts of how noise can damage your hearing,
right.
What high fidelity earplugs are and what they're meant to do. Not that it muffles sound, but it just lowers that overall sound to give you a better experience and help your ears out. And we hope to do a secondary study where hopefully I'll get some funding and get access to some high fidelity earplugs. And we'll go to these festivals with these same attendees and hand out the earplugs, give them proper tips on insertion and then realistic expectations of the device, and then stick around for a couple songs and then survey them on what they like, what they don't like, so we can really fine tune what needs to be done for a greater uptake of these devices.
That's awesome. I'm actually pretty excited to see, where the future for that kind of research goes for you. So were there any barriers for protection device use? Did you come across? Was there anything outstanding, or was it very accepting?
So on those risk profiles, the biggest barriers with it, they don't remember to bring it. So I would highly encourage anyone who has a hearing protection company to make a model of storage that can go on your keychain that you can take into venues and not forget as easily. Even wearable hearing protection. I have earrings with high fidelity earplugs on the end. So things like that are really helpful. I found that the highest risk group also had a fear for poor sound quality. So just increasing awareness and education about what a high fidelity earplug is and what it's meant to do.
One thing NHCA was giving out to members at the conference right now is little keychain earplug holders. And I think that's a really good point, because people end up getting to a situation and realizing that they didn't plan ahead. And it takes a lot of effort to remember your keys, your wallet, and your phone already, and then to add earplugs to that is an extra step that folks often find themselves in situations that they don't want to leave, but they forgot their earplugs, so now they're just suffering through it. So carrying it with you, and I loved your call out there of just think about that as we design a product, right? Flat pack earplugs, I don't know. 3D printed. Yeah. What was something that, as you were going through, changed the course of your project or gave you a result that just was not what fit into your expectations?
Right. I think one piece that people think about a lot with trying to teach youth about hearing protection, especially musicians or those in music class, are that kids don't want to learn. That tends to be one of the things. Like, they're not going to want to wear them. When we assess like benefits and barriers, that was one of the selections, is that students don't want to learn about this. And it was actually very rarely reported. The teachers believe that these students are wanting to do so. It's not necessarily that they don't want anything to do with it, which signals to us that, students are willing to do it. Music educators are willing to teach about it. And we kind of have this higher level piece where the World Health Organization is suggesting venue changes and for musicians to have some regulation.
I'm sorry, who?
The who? What?
Sorry, who?
But the in-between at like the federal and state level, there's no real pressure or push to help get this into curriculum and make it something more accessible. At whether it's a music teacher or a health teacher, but it's just not in the curriculum for kids.
And that's reflected with professional musicians that we see too, where one barrier that we found is, I hear clinicians, well-meaning clinicians, say we don't do hearing tests for the musicians who come in because they don't want that, because they're not asking for it. And in my personal experience, every time you offer it, they want it. We just saw 32 people at the venue here in Charleston who voluntarily came on a day off to do hearing testing and earmole impressions. And many of them didn't even want the earmole impressions. They just wanted the hearing test. If learning about hearing conservation and hearing loss prevention is offered to a human who cares about their hearing in their ears, it is almost always accepted and wanted. So where is that barrier coming from?
Right.
I don't know. Same thing, same question.
Yeah, so a shocking response that I had in one of my questions about hearing protection use was that I think about 63% of the EDM event attendees reported using high fidelity earplugs, which we did not expect.
Wow.
I think the other 23% of the EDM event attendees did not wear any hearing protection. So out of 755 people, they're still important to focus on, but we were really taken aback by that high fidelity earplug percentage. Also shocked, someone pointed out at this conference that there are still really high rates of tinnitus and muffled hearing and pain after events in all of the profile groups, whether they wear hearing protection or not. So I think it's also important to keep educating those who wear hearing protection on how to wear it correctly. Because if it's not being worn correctly, then it might not be providing as much benefit.
So that's an excellent place to end. You guys did wonderful jobs. I just want to say on behalf of everybody, congratulations on winning the scholarship award.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have just 2 more minutes and then we'll have to wrap up and get back in. Is there anything that you guys wanted to add? Anything you wanted to say?
I would just like to say that my time in NHCA has been wonderful. I think that everyone within this organization has been so supportive of direct interests. When I was a first year on campus and then going into second year, my upperclassmen said, "Hey, you should talk to these folks." And I'm like, talk to people in an organization? That sounds scary. Talk to one person to the next, and ended up talking individually one-on-one with probably 5 or 6 individuals in the field. And it's been fantastic. It really has. And it just really opens your eyes to what audiology can be in a hearing conservation setting. So I think anyone out there, if you're like, I don't know, I want to learn more, just reach out. It's scary at first, but everyone is there to really support you and help you learn more.
And NHCA is the most welcoming, small, inclusive Yeah.
I just like to emphasize what he said, especially the music audiologists. Everyone here in that group is so welcoming, and they're giving me introductions to the people I never thought I would even be able to meet in person, like Dr. Santucci. I just started out by listening to this podcast to get into music audiology, actually, and just emailed people. I found their emails online, emailed them, and they're so happy to help. I had Dr. Switzer helping me with this whole project. So it's just amazing. And I feel really confident and inspired by everyone at this conference. And I would also urge any audiologists who work with students to recommend that they join NHCA, because that's how I found the organization, and it's amazing. And they're great scholarships too. So
Yeah, they are. They're pretty heavy, pretty
Yes.
hefty scholarships.
I wouldn't have been able to come here without that scholarship.
We do have to call it quits in just a moment. Could you guys give me one word answer and maybe a sentence or two on what is your favorite sound?
My favorite sound is the car wash. I really like how the soap hits the car, and it's just funny.
And it's just funny. That's great.
Well, that's hard to follow up. One thing I would associate with my late brother is how he would whistle his S's as a joke. So whenever anyone does that, it reminds me of him, and that's one of my favorite sounds.
It's a hard trick to do. I won't even try.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Thank you both for being on the show.
And thank you.
Thank you.
This wraps up this series. Like Frank and I had said earlier, we're still kind of coming down from the buzz that we got from this conference, particularly because it was so special having a workshop dedicated to music audiology and having such a wonderful turnout.
100%. It was amazing to see all the faces there. And Juan, I have to say thank you specifically for being such a great collaborator on all of these events with me.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me.
And it really does feel like family. I hear a lot of people talk about NHCA and the community like this is their professional family. I think that a unsung quality of the NHCA conference is that it is so small. After the 6-hour workshop that we presented on music audiology, NHCA actually supported us in this wild and crazy plan of taking 30 or something audiologists who are in attendance over to a music venue. The Charleston Music Hall is about a 2-mile trek away. We went there and spoke with the venue staff. We spoke with the audio engineers, the lighting staff, the house crew, some of the artists, and performed what I like to call our guerrilla audiology, where we go into one of their back rooms. We performed hearing testing, ear mold impressions, and all of that came about because when I brought up this slightly unorthodox idea to NHCA, they said, yeah, go for it. You know your audience, you know how this is going to help them, and you know how to make a hands-on experience that is specific to our topic. And many of the attendees told me afterwards that was their first time backstage at a music venue. That was their first time speaking with musicians and venue staff about their ears. So I'm glad that we were able to bring that firsthand, hands-on experience to the audiologists from all over the country and a couple of international attendees as well. What do you think, Juan? Was that part of the event a success?
It was very successful, I feel. And I think everyone went away with a new sense of approaching clinical care to see these folks in the place of work, meeting them where they're at, and being able to help them out, with the very least education being that key component for hearing loss prevention. And I think everyone took something away.
We actually went back another day, saw a total of about 60 ears, or 30 people if you choose to combine them. And I hope that in a future episode, we get to talk more about that part of the conference. But this series of Talking Ears was more about the conference and about the educational opportunity. This episode also concludes the season of Talking Ears. We're going to be coming back with a completely new season and slightly different format, focusing again on musician stories and clinical implications of music audiology. I look forward to seeing you there. I look forward to hearing your feedback about this series of episodes and everything we do in the future. Keep sending in those messages, and we'll talk soon. Talking Ears is a production of Earmark Hearing Conservation. The theme music is by Scott Hallam. You can find more of his music at audiodowsing.com. The show is produced and edited by Juan Vasquez, Scott Hallam, Mary Kim, and myself. Thanks for listening.